Hi, this is Steve Wraith, and thanks for listening to the Steve Wraith interviews. This interview was recorded during 2020's lockdown period and was part of a special series.
Hey Warren, you okay?
My friend, how are you?
Very good, mate. Very good. You're looking well, and
look like you've got a bit of sun, my friend. Is it? I've seen you out in the town.
Just a little bit, mate. I caught a little bit today. 28 degrees today in Newcastle.
Right, mate. That's it. It's a heat wave.
It is. I hope it's a sign of the forthcoming takeover just about to go through. We're starting to get some Arab sun coming over, I think. But
I don't want to make you jealous, but I have 365 days of the year like that, so don't worry about it.
Now, first of all, before I forget, Jack Fairman sent us a photograph, mate. I've got to share this with you. It's from outside the ground back in your day. Do you recognise this car?
Yeah, I think I do. Yeah.
He says it's the old Mondeo that you and Les used to share.
I'm not sure about we used to share it. Yeah, I don't know. I think it was Les's, not mine. Mind you, Les won't get in that.
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, he inboxes it. He says, "Can you make sure you show Warren this photograph?" He says, "When I was up at the ground," he says, "I always used to take photographs of just obviously myself with players, etc. But he took photographs of the surrounding things." He says, "I'm sure this was Warren's car or Les's car, and I think they used to come up to training in it." So mental, like just weird what people keep, isn't it?
Well, I let him keep believing. But yeah.
Okay, so we've had a little bit of a little bit more stuff online over the last couple of days, and a lot of people getting excited. George Culkin, for me, still the journalist that you turn to for something, something which is a bit more promising, and he's really put out some more positive stuff today. Someone on Ashley's side's the most detailed. Said it's the most detailed checks at the Premier League and investigation that they've ever done. The public nature on it's been utterly exhausting for everybody. I'm sure you'll care when it happens, and it will. So he thinks very carefully before he tweets, George, and that's very promising. That he's speaking to people on both sides of the deal, and it looks very certain that we're close now to the end game. And John Richardson, another respected journalist, has come out today and also tweeted, that he's got a very good source in the Middle East to say that we're virtually there. So a lot of people expecting some announcement this week, Warren.
Yeah, Steve, I think when we spoke a few weeks ago, it was moving along really nicely, but it takes time. I think that's the thing. I think we're so eager and keen for this to happen for Newcastle and for us to get excited, but it takes time. And probably the last 10 days of where the solicitors have got involved. But you're right, when you have solicitors and you have top journalists that are coming out with facts, then we too tend to believe that it is going to happen. And whether it's going to be later on this week or next week, the more we hear these promising signs, the more we all get a little bit more excited and looking forward to what might be. But it takes time. Everything, the money that's involved, the situation that we're in at the moment in the world, so things can't move along as quickly as we'd all love it to be. We'd love it to be shake hands, give the money, swap over. We've got great owners. Let's start moving forward and start bringing people in. So I think we're all so anxious. We want things to happen. And I'm the same as you guys. I wake up every morning, sometimes 2 o'clock at night, have a look on my phone, see if anything's come through on the social media that we've had, and just hoping that, things are being signed, sealed and delivered. So, there's lots of promising signs. And like you said, the journalists that are coming out with this, there was a guy from Australia that's come out and mentioned it. It's not just 1 or 2 people. It's 3 or 4 people that you sort of trust going forward. So again, like always, my friend, it's just fingers crossed.
Yeah, 100%, mate, 100%. And somebody is going to be right. I think I put a tweet out last night saying I can constantly say each day that the takeover is going to happen tomorrow. And I think there seems to be an urgency among some of these accounts to be the one to break it. And look, who cares who breaks the news, Warren? As long as the news, when it does eventually happen, that's all we're really bothered about. And everybody's played their part, and it'll just be exciting and a big relief and certainly a much needed boost in these times of COVID-19.
Steve, as well, I think because of the situation, we want it to happen, and it will organically happen. It was going to go through. There's a system. There's a line of inquiries that have to go through, and because of the profile of the people that are invested in the football club, it's taking its time. And we don't want to get too anxious. We don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. And also the world we live in, everybody wants to be the first one to break the news. Everybody wants to be the first one to come out with a story. So sometimes they think 2 or 3 days ahead, oh, I'm just going to write something going forward. But the people that we've spoke about and you just mentioned are people that we sort of respect, and they're not going to put their name to something that they don't genuinely feel that it's going to happen.
100%. JT Robinson says, do you think the shine has been taken away from the takeover due to so many stories coming out? Do you think so? Or?
No, I just think it's like we spoke about before, Steve. It's more the fact now that it's got global interest, where before, if it was just one owner coming in, it sort of might have got a bit buried in what's going on in the world. But I think because of the money that we're talking about that could possibly be invested, the club, the fans, the history, we've all been reminiscing about, you know, I watched it with Newcastle United, so Bobby Robson's first game, the 8-0 against Sheffield Wednesday. So there's been so much interest about what's happening. So yes, it's news. It's big breaking news, not just in Newcastle in the Northeast or in the UK. I'm talking about over here in the States and globally. So that's why it's got so much traction. And as I said, you're going to have people coming from one side and people from the other side just trying to break a story.
Yeah, Carl Chapman says, what makes George so credible? He's a journo like the rest of them and needs to sell papers. It's because George, like myself, has met Amanda Staveley, and I think that's a big, you know, pointer to the fact that, you know, he's actually done, you know, well getting in right at the start of the process with her. And, you know, he's somebody who can be trusted, and he doesn't go out and make wild statements. He hasn't put dates on things, etc. So I think you have to give George a bit of credibility, and by his own admission today, he's spoken to somebody on the Ashley side of the deal, you know, so he's in touch with both sides. I think that's what makes him, you know, a reliable journalist. You are right, Carl. You know, journalists are journalists. They do have to sell papers and they do have to get clicks. But, you know, George, and, you know, you back me up on this, Warren, George is very credible.
There's certain journalists that we all know that will just break a story for the sake of it. And that's part of the world that we live in now. And they try and be sensational about what's happening. But there's certain journalists that are, you know, very thorough with what they do. They do the investigations. They look into where they're going with certain stories. And George would be one of them. We might be proven wrong, but we don't know. But we can only go by what history showed us, proof working with people, having the stories that have broken through someone else. So from that opinion, I would think, you know, there's someone you can rely on. But I think it's all adds to this story, this excitement, this unsure about what's going to happen, because we've had 13 years of being in the dark days, really, and just trying to plod along, trying to be a Premier League football club. But now, with the light at the end of the tunnel, with the situation that might happen and the people that have been talked about invested and the players that have been linked, it's getting everybody excited, and rightly so.
Yeah, just seen somebody asking if we're going to continue with these after lockdown. Yeah, definitely. If you log on to my YouTube page, we've rejigged that a little bit, and now that Instagram have changed the way that they do these, we can now download them and stick them onto YouTube, because we're getting a lot of people who haven't got Instagram saying, where can we see these? So
I can't believe you're so high tech, my friend. Before you used to text with one finger, now you're downloading, you're YouTubing and things like that. It's amazing.
This is what happens in lockdown. You've got no choice. But you've got no choice. It's not the kid. It's not me homeschooling the kids, Warren. It's the kids homeschooling me.
I've become a great cook and a great hairdresser in the last 8 weeks. I've done something good. I can't speak any different languages, but my hair and my food's okay.
Fantastic, mate. That's all you need. Muck Murphy says, Warren, in your opinion, who is or was the best right back or wing back in the world?
Cafu always comes to mind, you know, as a player. The way he used to go forward, express himself. Dani Alves would be another one. I mean, they're playing in great teams, so obviously makes it a lot easier. I don't know if people watched the game at the weekend at Dortmund, and here's a player that I would try and go with, would be Hakimi. He's on loan from Real Madrid. He's at Dortmund. He can play as a fullback, but he's probably more suited as a wing back. So Cafu, in my time, I would look and say, yeah, there was a top player. And then towards the end of it, you know, obviously Dani Alves come in and took over that mantle. You know, Roberto Carlos, you know, the Brazilian go forward, they have flair, they want to express themselves. So he would be one. But, you know, watch out for this kid Hakimi. He's only a young player again. I know, Steve, we spoke about players that the club should be attracted. I would go and have a look at them, because he's got a buyout clause where his performances probably in the last 18 months have been nothing but sensational in the Champions League and in the Bundesliga. I like him. I think he's an outstanding player.
Superb. Mr. Telford's question, favourite moment in black and white stripes?
We've said this before, Steve. All 220 games of them. I loved every minute of it, and you know, to have that flashbacks and have the memories. And we've had a lot of thinking about what went on, and the stories that we've had with Kevin Keegan coming to the club, and the time that we had beating United 5-0. The Barcelona game obviously stands out. That was a special occasion. But I can honestly say I loved every minute of it. And we've had whether it was my debut, whether it's playing in cup finals. I was a lucky man. I worked hard for it, and I never wanted to turn my back and walk away and go somewhere else. So it was difficult, and sometimes that as well as anyone, Steve. But just being around the fans and the city, and that's why now I talk about it, and the hairs on my arms stand up. And I look forward to coming back to Newcastle in the future as well, as long as it's safe and healthy to do so. So as I said, I loved every minute. There's not one time. Love going to training. 5,000 people at Maiden Castle waiting in there in the cold, and Kevin used to say to us, look, no one comes in the changing room until you sign every autograph. So we used to have to leave Gosford Park with Les and David and Shaka and get down there about 45 minutes, because we knew it was important for the fans. So and important for the club, and important for us as well in the city. So all of it was great, and that's why I would love to come back and be part of it all going forward. The first game, once we do get the new owners, new players, new excitement, it's going to be a great day, and probably a great night as well, and a great weekend. Hopefully it's a bank holiday weekend. We're going on a bender for about 3 days.
The way we're going, it could be Christmas, mate. We'll have to see. We'll see how it plans out. Adam Dixon says, Warren, are you claiming the third goal in the second 4-3 at Anfield or not?
Yeah, of course I am. Yeah, that's part of mine. Yeah, part of mine. It was a neat finish.
Yeah, 100%. Tell Ross says, evening, Steve. I just want to get it out there that Warren, like Rob Lee, is one of the most genuine, decent players I've ever met. Great memories of him, and great to hear him still have the passion. He's a real Newcastle legend.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And it comes from inside. It's not BS. It's not just trying to satisfy people. The time that we had up there with the likes of Rob Lee and Bez and Alan, and I don't know whether people see it the other day on my social media. I put out a picture of me, Gary, Shay, and Rob, and Alan. We was out involved in the club, and hopefully we get them days back, because it's been a long time coming.
Yeah, Johnny Ball asks, Warren, are you watching Harry's Heroes, and would you not fancy joining up with the lads to play? Have you been watching it?
We've been getting bits of it. We don't really get too much of it, but some of them have. I put on £1 or £2, by the way. They do well to get in some of them shirts. But it's been good. It's great watching them, and Harry Redknapp being involved as well. And I've been getting bits. I haven't been able to watch the whole series. I've obviously got a little of it from Rob getting in there. So it's been fun to watch, and obviously the memories start coming back. And there's been some emotional scenes, with Merson the other day, and Neil Ruddock as well. As much as we love him, you see another side of what's going on with the players after the game. I don't know, like the mental side now is a big point of how people are surviving, not just professional athletes, but also the normal public people, the Joe Blogs that are out there trying to survive at the moment. It's something that we all got to keep an eye on.
Yeah, Lee Hendry as well. I mean, I'm good friends with Lee, and I've kept in touch with him over the years. He came and played for us in the Newcastle United, Manchester United charity game that we did for Alan's charity a few years ago at Kingston Park, and he guested for Manchester United. And lovely guy, very sociable. I went across to Marbella as well with Keith Gillespie to do a talk a few years back, and Lee was out there. So he's a great guy, but you would never have thought any of that mental pressure that he has, was none of it was evident when I met him. But it was just, it has been a completely different program. The climax is obviously tonight. They play Germany tonight, so I'm looking forward to catching up with that. But it's been really good, and as you say, very, very, very important, really, the mental health aspect, especially for former footballers, because you've gone on after your professional career to go to America, and you're doing something that you love. You're still involved with football, but not every footballer has that opportunity, and some of them struggle.
Yeah, and I said that as well. My great friend Gary Speeder comes to mind straight away. But when I was involved with the PFA, and maybe playing non-league and coming through the ranks, has made me realise that there is something after football. And I was lucky enough with Stuart Pearce. We did our coaching badges, being with the PFA and being a chairman for a couple of years. This career is going to come to an end. So even when I was in my early 30s, I started looking at coaching, looking at the media side. But not everybody does that, because it's hard, because you play a season, you finish on, say, May the 15th, and then your contract's up and you're done. I know the money, but not everybody's in that bracket of earning top money, the lower league players, and all of a sudden you just end, and it's difficult, and it's difficult for the wives or the girlfriends and people. But you know, you have to be strong. You have to have good people around you. But it's an illness, and it's something that's educated me probably in the last decade about what's gone on. Definitely.
Yeah. J Rose question there. What's the most rewarding part of the job that Warren does now?
I think coaching kids. I'm lucky enough. I've been able to coach my kids and seeing them grow and progress and enjoy their football and win games and have fun doing it. You know, coaching something that I love. I love the media side, but nothing really fulfills you as coaching. You know, putting a team together, putting a group of kids together to go out and enjoy it. As I said, I'm a lucky man. I realise every day getting up, coaching kids, being around them, whether it was my oldest boy Milo or Kane. And now my youngest one, Ty, it's been something that I've been lucky doing. And I love it. I love the coaching. I love being out there. I love being around players and love just talking. We've been watching probably the same as you, Steve, watching a documentary about Sir Bobby on Netflix. Yeah. And it's all of us, and that's why we miss the game. That's why we miss walking to St James's Park on a Saturday afternoon, going there, because you get a special feeling from it that no other job or sport gives you. Walking up St James's Park, getting ready for the game. I remember now on the bus going up to there, leaving the hotel, walking on. You just get this adrenaline, and it's the same with coaching. It's the nearest thing it comes to playing. Yeah,
Mup says best overall attacker in today's game for you.
Oh, that's a good one. Let me think. Attacker. I like. I get it. I keep going about it, but Sancho, I like him. The boy, if you get a chance to, he's a natural talent. I like players to express themselves going forward. So you look at someone, the likes of Sterling has come through as an outstanding player. A bit old school as well. I love a Harry Kane. He reminds me a lot of Alan, the way he is, like single-minded, disciplined in that sort of respect. He's a goal scoring machine. Injuries as well. But yeah, I mean, we've been really lucky as well in the time where you've had Ronaldo and Messi for over a decade, two are the best players that have ever played the game, and arguably probably the best ever. One of them's been given us from God with Messi, and Ronaldo has showed all kids that if you work hard and discipline and be focused and train hard, you're going to get these rewards. So, they're the type of players that I like, that go out there and appreciate what they're doing and enjoy what they're doing. I think that's a big thing. I look at some players like Martial at Man United. He looks like he's going to the dentist every day, because it's like, oh no, I'm playing in front of 70,000 people. Oh no, I like players to enjoy it. We used to walk out at St James's and have a laugh about it. I mean, are you really serious? We're playing in front of 52,000 people and we're getting ready to rock and roll. So, and I say that to my kids, I go and enjoy the game. Enjoy it. It's the best feeling you have doing it. So they're the type of ones that I like. And Sancho, watch out for this kid, because I think he's not already burst onto the scene, but he's going to have a big impact in the next decade. Yeah.
JT Robinson says, was there a certain player who left the club during your time there which really surprised you?
Les Ferdinand. Mm-hmm. Well, and again, it didn't surprise me because I was away with him in Bali with my wife, and he was, going through, toying the idea when Kenny turned around and unfortunately said to him that you're not going to play every week off the back of just scoring 20 or 25 goals. Les would have been the one. I think you've spoken to Les, Steve, as well. He still regrets it a little bit. He wishes he could have dug his heels in, because I said to him as well, there's no way you're going to sit on the bench. And unfortunately then Alan got injured in a pre-season friendly at Goodison Park. And, we had John Dale Thomason, who was went on to be an outstanding player, but the time wasn't right for him there. But Les would be one for me. And then you could throw David into that as well, but it was all sort of like coming apart there. But for me, Les was the one that sort of broke the band up a little bit. And it was difficult to replace him with Alan. And then the list goes on, because he loved it up there, and they loved him as well.
Yeah. Nameless Ghoul says, who in the MLS could take the Premier League by storm?
Oof. That's a good one. Martinez, the kid at Atlanta, but unfortunately he's just got a bad injury. He's another exciting player. He's a goal scorer. I'm just looking as well, just trying to think. Let me come back to that one, because there is a few. LAFC has got a couple of good young players there, but yeah, I still think that there's time. There's not someone who I think, right, let's go and get them. I'd have to have a good look around, but I've noticed there's one or two good young players. A couple of New York Red Bulls come to mind, but yeah, let me come back to that. But there's definitely him I would look at as a player that could put the ball in the back of the net, but then he needs a team that's going to give him some service.
Yeah. Nick McDonald says, as kids, we used to go down to Woolsington and knock on all the players' doors. Shaka and Warren were top notch and always said hello and signed things. Sorry for doing your head in, Warren. You're a legend, mate.
No problem. It was a pleasure. Yeah, I remember him knocking on the door. It's unusual for him, so it was nice to have people come along. I got a quick story as well. Someone put it on Twitter about that. I had one of the groundsmen. I was talking to the groundsman at St James's, and this is a true story because someone just reminded to him. I ain't Percy Thrower. I can't grow anything in my garden. I don't know how people do it. But I said to him, it was autumn. So I said to him, all my flowers keep on dying. What's going on? Why do they keep on dying? He went, it's autumn and it's winter, so they do die. So that made me feel about that big when I come and mention it. Because I was like, I see it everywhere. People's gardens are lovely. There's new flowers everywhere. I said, come to mine. They're all dying. He went, yeah, it's the autumn. It normally happens, Warren. It probably happens once every year. So that was my story about green fingers and people coming around at Walsington. But yeah, it was when we first lived there. And David was along the road as well. So we used to drive in together. Yeah, good times, good memories.
Mark D, NUFC, says, when Warren was going through a bad spell, many players would have crumbled, but he showed he wanted to wear the black and white and ended up in the blue chip group. Proper legend. Lots of good comments coming in, Warren. Yeah,
I tell you a quick story as well. We were playing at home, and it was a Nottingham Forest game in the FA Cup, and I made a balls up with an interception, and Ian Wone smashed one in from 35 yards in the top corner. I think Shaka should have done better, but that's another story. I remember sitting there with Bez afterwards, and obviously really frustrated. I got the booze, and it's hard. It's hard, but as I said, a bit of character and a bit of fight. That's the way I've been brought up. And Bez went to me, "You're a little bit too honest, Warren. You always want the ball. You're always going to be hunting. You're always going." Sometimes, and I went, "But Bez, that's me. I can't be anything than honest and hardworking, and that's how it got me to where I am today. I could hide." I could throw one in and say I'm injured and things like that, but that ain't me. I couldn't do that to myself, and I couldn't do it to the fans. And obviously my players around, and me and Bez was having a good chat about it. And I've always got a lot of time for him because one, I like him as a person, but he knew what I was going through, and he come round and just said, look, these are the things, and we had a good chat about it. And he said, well, if that's your attitude, son, just keep going, because that's the only way you're going to come through this. If you throw the towel in, they're going to see it. If you fight for it and get everything, they're going to love you. And eventually it paid off. And like I've said to you before, Steve, it was just not that you want the accolade and your love, and you just want respect. And I think the fans respected what I went through. I mean, I wasn't David, I wasn't Alan Shearer, but I was what I was, and I went out there and give it all. And that's what I can do. I could play a little bit, yeah, but at the end of the day, I weren't going to hide. I weren't going to throw one in. I definitely wasn't going to walk away from it. So it worked out in the end. It made me a better person doing it.
Yeah, Amma Hussein says, ask Warren if he thinks Rafa's overrated by Newcastle fans. It's a bit of a debate that often happens. I suppose.
Yeah.
There is a lot of pro Rafa fans, but I have noticed there are a few who, didn't like the football that he played.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Steve. I think he did a good job with the circumstances that he had. He did a very good job, actually. And what he did that I think a lot of the fans have been a little bit misled by, he stuck with us, which I would have thought you should do anyway. When we went down, people thought he was going to walk away because he'd obviously managed teams like Liverpool, Real Madrid, Inter Milan. But he didn't, because he realised what the club was about and realised that he could be a hero getting them back up with the resources and the team that he had. Is his style endearing to the Newcastle way? Probably not. But he's always done that, whether it's with Valencia with two holding midfield players, Liverpool, however he's played, he's more about not conceding than about winning. But at the time and the personnel that he had, he did a good job, because that's what he would. Now, if you had more attacking players and more flair players, and his record speaks for himself as what he's done, then it could have been a bit more of a judgment. But he couldn't, because that's what he had and that's what he worked with. So I think people will respect him, and there's a lot of people that would have him back in a heartbeat. For me, like I said to you, Steve, I think we've moved on from that. I think we've gone away from just surviving, just about not getting beat, just about competing. We want to talk about winning and challenging now. And I think that's where we are in the light of looking forward with players, looking forward with recruitment, looking forward with managers, and obviously coaches as well.
Nameless School makes a really good point. Real Madrid broke the goal scoring record with Rafa as manager. I'm obviously pro Rafa. Obviously, I've worked with the guy as well, so I have a better insight into him. But from my perspective, I think...
Would you have him back then? Would you have him back?
Yeah, I think it's unfinished business. The guy's a winner. And I certainly think that,
Do you think he would change his style of football, though? Do you think he would adapt to what we want?
I think Rafa Benitez will always play that style of football. I think he did it at Liverpool, and he did it with success. I think this is a completely different situation, though, and this is what we're not talking about unlimited funds, but we're talking about a hell of a lot of money that he's going to have to spend. So there will be that opportunity. There were some games that Rafa played, you know, in his time at Newcastle, which were attacking. There was, you know, especially when you look at those, you know, those games where Rondon and Perez towards the end of his career at Newcastle were entertaining to watch. And, you know, he brought Almiron in, who was an attack-minded player, and the three of them dovetailed fantastically well, and obviously kept us up. So I think there's pros and cons of bringing all types of managers in. I can see the argument for Pochettino. I think Pochettino is a young up-and-coming coach who has proved himself at Tottenham as far as competing in the Premier League's concerned, and of course getting to a Champions League final, but ultimately he didn't win it. And, you know, he hasn't won a trophy. So, but he's young, he's exciting, he plays an exciting brand of football. So, you know, look, I think the first things first is the owners come in. Steve Bruce sees the job out that he's done, and you know, I don't ever expect the new owners to come in and give Steve Bruce a reign at the club. I think even he will realise that, but I think he will get the chance to finish the season, and I think that's only fair, you know.
But isn't it great that we're talking about having someone like Rafa Benitez, Pochettino, where before it was like, well, who's just got sacked? Who can we maybe bring in? Who's, you know, that's what's refreshing, I think, and that's why I want us to be refreshing going forward. I think it's always, for Kevin, when he went back the second time, it didn't work out. You know, he went back into a situation that he sort of half knew but thought it might be different. And the same with Rafa, you know. But like we said, Steve, it's nice that we're actually talking in these terms, that we can go and compete. We can go and attract someone like Rafa Benitez, and whether it's Pochettino or Allegri, these type of managers are being linked with Newcastle, where, you know, that's what we had before with the likes of Sir Bobby Robson when he was at Barcelona. So, you know, it's refreshing. It's nice that we're actually talking about these type of coaches that we want at the club, and actually having a debate rather than saying, please come to our club, please try and help them out. It shouldn't be like that.
While we're talking about managers, I've lost who asked the question, but somebody asked, what was it like playing for Joe Kinnear? And it's funny because I just found a photograph of me with Joe a few years ago. I got him to come up and do a talk in. I did a former managers and coaches talk in. So I had the likes of Gordon Lee, I had Ozzy Ardiles, I had Joe Kinnear, Jack Charlton, Willie McFall. So we had a pretty good mix of former managers. Keith Birkinshaw came up as well as one of the coaches, John Carver. So it was a cracking lineup. I found Joe to be an absolutely fantastic guy. He stole the show on the night time. He was very, very funny to listen to. Had some great stories. And when you think about the nightmare that we had with him at Newcastle, and the way that he was, you know, the way that he was portrayed, and his ultimate, you know, bad turn, which then ended up seeing him leave the club. But you know what a cracking fella. And I can imagine it must have been a laugh having him as a manager.
It was great. You know, Wimbledon at the time, the Crazy Gang with Joe, it suited it. It suited his personality. Newcastle is totally different. But for me as well, coming through at Wimbledon, being a young boy, having, you know, Ray Hartford there first and foremost, who Alan obviously knows and speaks very highly of as well, having him as a coach, and then Joe Kinnear coming in after Peter Wibb that we had there was great for me, because he knew the club. He let us do what we needed to do. He had Vinnie Jones, he had John Fashanu. We had a certain way that we was going to win games, the likes of Dean Holsworth, John Scales, players like that. He had some good players there as well. And it suited Joe, because he would just let us have anarchy on the field, and, you know, he would rein us in when we needed to. I mean, he's cool down. This is no disrespect to Joe, because I love him to death, but his cool down was going into David Lloyd and going on an all day drinking and an afternoon session. That was his cool down. That's what he thought a cool down would be. A lovely fella, knew the game obviously, and was man management style. You talk about Harry Redknapp. Joe's in that sort of mould as well. We'll just get characters and leaders going forward. But for Newcastle, and I thought Joe would have reached out to us, because I know he brought me up on a couple of press conferences and things like that, just to talk about the club, because I think he went in there thinking, yeah, it's going to be there. And like I said to it, it's totally different. It's not Wimbledon. It's not that type of football club that you can get away with it. There's certain things, and then obviously it snowballed. His the legendary press conferences was hilarious. Was hilarious with some of the people and some of the comments that he would come out with. But like Steve, like you said, his heart was in the right place. He wanted to do the right, but it was just a mixture of chaos that was going on. But with Wimbledon, we could get away with that. We loved it. The more chaotic it was for us, the better. And we used to thrive.
He told me a great story, and it was at that night, and he said he always struggled to find his way to Nottingham Forest's ground when he was there. And what he actually did on this particular occasion, it was a winter's training session. It was quite dark in the morning, and he was driving round and round, and he was about 10 or 15 minutes late for the training session. All the players were there, they're stripped and ready to go. So he rang the groundsman from a call box before the days of mobiles, and asked him to switch the floodlights on at the ground.
I tell you, with Joe as well, whenever you see, as soon as he does this, Steve,
yeah,
you know he's lying. Because I used to go into his office and he would say, there'd been like Man City was after me, Everton, Arsenal, Celtic. I'd walk up there on a Monday morning and say, Joe, look, I loved it here, but I think it's time for me to move on. I'm 24 years of age. It's been great here. He went, listen, son, we've had no one coming in. No one's interested. I went, Joe, you're lying. He went, I said, keep touching your head. He could never play poker because he'd start doing that when you knew he had a bad hand. But so whenever you see him, Joe, if he does that, you're lying.
He's lying.
Yeah.
I've got to ask you before we get back to Newcastle, the Wimbledon initiation. I mean, I watched that fantastic BT Sport documentary a few years ago about the Crazy Gang, and obviously, John Fashanu going on about what they used to do, and he's not very apologetic about the way that he went on either. But was it really that bad? And what was your initiation like?
Oh yeah, no, it was part of whether it was John Hartson coming in for a record signing where we burned his suit straight away, and for me it was I just come to the club, and I think I don't know whether I told you this story, but I got a bit carried away. We'd beaten Sheffield United away, and I think we beat Nottingham Forest as well. And media had asked me, I was 21 years of age, 22, and what do you think about women? I said, we're changing. We're a footballing club. We're this so. Go in training the next day, go do a little 1-2 pass fash. He clotheslines me, nearly knocks my head off, puts his arm out, cuts me on the floor, I'm knocked down, go again. Vinny comes in, 2-foots me, come through. It's like, come on, boys, what's going on? He went, don't get carried away. He said, we are the Crazy Gang. Don't think you're going to start changing this club and this is your initiation test. Like that was the first thing, kicking crap out of me in training. Then before I know it, the owner, which was Sam Aman, who used to run the club. The chairman was Stanley Reid, but Sam Aman used to run it. He'd already slashed my tyres on my car. So the owners slashed my tyres. My captain and vice captain have tried to break my leg and then clothesline me in a training session. And then before I get out the shower, all my clothes have been cut up and burnt in the trash bin, in the bin. So that was your initiation test. And if you come through it, and another time I got stripped in front of, I just got my England call up, and there was a big media day there. They stripped me in front of it. Yeah, I sound like joking here, scratching my head. But the initiation test was to strip me and throw me in a puddle. That was part of it. And it just went on from that. The more, and we used to have a guy called Kenny Cunningham, and he used to, an Irish international, great kid, but the worst dresser everywhere. It made Philip Albert look like Giorgio Armani. So he used to wear his stuff coming, and we used to cut it up. But the whole point that we used to do it, we used to go in the players' lounge. His wife would come up and have a go at us all the time, and the more she did it, the more we would keep doing it. He was like, "Okay, please, guys, don't do it." My wife. So every day, every game we played at home, he'd come into the director's box or the players' lounge. Someone would cut his tie, so he'd come walking in with his tie. His wife would go mental, and this went on for about 8 weeks. So it was all part of it. And as I said, every time you got selected for an international, or you got player of the month or whatever it may be, it weren't too many at Wimbledon, but they would slash your tyres, burn your clothes, whatever it took going forward. But it was all part of it. But the more you went against it, the more we'd keep doing it. So every day we'd keep cutting his clothes up, and that was part of it. But yeah, getting stripped, being thrown in puddles, tyres, clothes, it was all part of it. Steve, you would have loved it. You would have loved it. It was a great fun.
Well, Felon Football Club, which I managed for 20 years, was called the Crazy Gang as well, and we had some great adventures, and we mimicked ourselves on that. My nickname was Vinny as well, so I couldn't kick a football, but I could kick a player. So Did
you have the music system as well? Did you have the system going?
It's funny, somebody contacted me on Twitter the other day and says, I remember you you used to run that felon team that used to bring the ghetto blaster to the changing rooms. But we had a right laugh. In fact, I'll tweet something later, mate. I've found it. Obviously, in lockdown, you find loads of old stuff, and I found this cutting from the local paper that Ian Willis, a good journalist friend of mine, had done. I'd been sent off 7 times in the space of 10 days. I used to play Saturday afternoon, Saturday morning league, Sunday morning leagues, Sunday afternoon leagues, and 5-a-side. So it was an accumulation of all those games that had red cards at every single level of football.
I wouldn't think by looking at you, Steve. You look like butter wouldn't melt in your mouth, son. I remember we did it to Man United. They come down to Plough Lane, and they just obviously one of the biggest clubs, and we'd the floor was concrete, so we put cold ice on the floor. We put in their tea. God knows what Vinny had done into their tea. I don't know what he must have done something. Put something, or put himself into the tea, and then in the sugar there was all salt as well. And they hated coming down to Plough Lane to do that. We would do anything you could. Again, I don't know whether you're watching a documentary about Michael Jordan with the Detroit Pistons. Yeah, the last dance with Detroit Pistons. We was a little bit like that. No one wanted to. And the biggest compliment we ever had was Fergie when they won the title. Said, once we went down and played Wimbledon and didn't get intimidated, we knew we'd win the league. So it is what it is. It wasn't the purest of football, but you do what you have to do sometimes.
Great times. NUFC history's question: which of the 2 runner-up teams from the mid-90s was the better one? That's a good question.
The first one I think was the better team. I think I would say that with Kevin's team, I think we was a bit more flair going forward. Kenny's team was obviously more resilient and grinded teams out. There was another game that was on social media with Robbie Elliott getting the winner at Arsenal, and that was a big game for us as well. So, I would say the first one, the entertainers at the beginning for me, Steve.
Yeah, 100%.
And I just see that one. You're right. How stupid am I saying cold ice? Of course, ice is cold. I do apologize. Whoever's put that up. So
that's Chris Little, who was my captain at Felon, actually.
Oh, is it Chris Little? Shut your face, Chris. I'm going to 2-foot you when I see you. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Andrew Ray, how did Warren find Dennis Wise, another popular guy in Newcastle?
Wisey was Wisey. Playing against him as well was always a challenge. I mean, he loved pinching you on the side and winding you up and getting you. He was a hell of a player. But yeah, not that I dislike him, but I've just no feeling. I think I told you the story as well. And there's no sour grapes here. That when I was in America, I said to Wisey about, if you want me to be a scout over here in North America, the Major League, let me know, and I'd love to do it. No money, no anything. Just want to go out there and do it. And he said, "No, you're all right. We've got a guy in Texas that we're going to use," and things like that. So it is what it is. I don't really think anything. I think he didn't do a great job when he was at Newcastle. I think that's been said. But yeah, Wisey's Wisey. He's fine. He's fine.
Ben Gardner reminds us of that fantastic joke in the moment. Didn't he send scouts to watch Shane Ferguson to sign him when he was actually on our books? Yeah, Shane Ferguson was on loan, and he actually said, "Oh, I'm interested in that kid. We actually already had him. He was on loan." Brilliant. Michael Bull says, Andy Cole, Les Ferdinand, Alan Shearer. Start 1, bench 1, and sell 1.
I think it would be in that order. Alan, you got to play.
Yeah.
Les, I'm a big Les fan. You'd say that. I have to put Les on the bench, but I'll bring you on after 5 minutes. I'll take myself off and put you on, Les, so you can play that. Coley, you went to Man United, so I've got to get rid of you. But yeah, I'll tell you a quick story with Andy. It's funny how you get to know people. Is that we was in England, and we was old in England, and Andy was always very, and you probably know this, like really quiet, sat by himself. And some people thought he was moody and whatever. Whenever you play a game, shake hands and walk away. We was lucky enough to be invited with the PFA out to Barbados to play a tournament out there.
Yeah.
And I got sitting there with Mitchell Thomas, Steve, Scott. No, not Scott wasn't there. It was Andy and another player. Steve Hodge was there. And Andy was there, and we sat there for 3 hours with Andy talking about the game and laughing and joking. And I said to Carl, I wish we would have known this 10 years ago, because you're such a funny fellow, and to get him, he'd be great on things like this, because he's got a personality. But it's funny, for the years that he played, you only really saw a certain person that he was very like forward thinking, just do his own thing, go off. But to sit there and have we wasn't boozing, wasn't drinking, we was having coffee, having lunch. But we sat there with Mitchell and Steve and Andy was there, and he was such a pleasure to be around. And that's why I've got so much time for Andy. I mean, one, he was a fantastic player and a goal scoring machine. All right, he left and went off to Man United, but as a person as well, phenomenal to be around. I mean, talk about a football brain. It was great to be around.
Yeah. Nameless Ghoul says, Steve, what's Warren's thoughts on the players having 3 days off during the week? Is that why players like Shelby are bigging Steve Bruce up as manager? It's a bit strange, isn't it? I mean, I have had more time off. Bruce has come in and done it his own way. Rafa was quite a disciplinarian. Coach. That's the way that he does it. Bruce has gone down the other route. I suppose when you're a manager coming in, you're trying to win the dressing room over from the moment you come in, aren't you?
Yeah, you are, Steve, but also you've got to be forward thinking. And I spoke to Mario Melchior, who was with Steve at Birmingham and I think at Wigan as well. It might correct me. And Steve's body is he's old school. He likes his way of doing things. For me now, I think a team, you've got a coach, you've got to be around. You've got a sense as a coach when to give players off, and that's what Kenny was good at, and so Bobby was great at as well. You know, for Bobby, he would have us in 7 days a week, and 9 times out of 10, we'd love to be in 7 days a week. Not necessarily trainers, but because he wanted to get his point across, he wanted to talk about different scenarios in the game going forward. But then he'd pick a moment that we'd have a game and say, all right, guys, the Nikos, the foreign players, you can go off and have 4 days or 3 days somewhere, let you know. You guys, the blue chip guys, we're going to go and play golf. We're going to go and play golf. We'll have a bit of time, a bit of sightseeing, whatever we need to do. So, yeah, you know, horses for courses. But I think in the modern game, and particularly the situation Newcastle is in, you need to be around each other. You need to be working on the training field. You need to be not just as a group, but sometimes individually, going to work with the finishing, bit of striking, tactically, defending. So I think the game has moved on, and you can't keep, you know, the level that you're playing at and the fitness levels, you can't keep having 3 or 4 days off a week.
No. Tom Dixon asks, Warren, would you keep Danny Rose at Newcastle?
Yeah, I think he's a very good player. I know he's outspoken, and you know that's his opinion. What he spoke about not wanting to come in and being a guinea pig and etc. Do I think there's better players out there to get and younger players? Yeah, I think so. I think Danny's, as I said, a good player, and I think he's obviously proved himself at a high level. But again, I would use him for what we need to, and then look elsewhere to going forward. So, and listen, I think it's difficult for players at this time because as soon as I say one thing, they're talking about the Dele Alli. Like some journalists are saying, like he sort of deserved to be robbed, which is crazy because of the situation that Premier League players are seen at, which is crazy. And Danny's come out with a few comments that he's outspoken. He said what he feels. Troy Deeney's done it as well for his reason with his kid. Totally understand that. Going forward. So I look at his football side and I think where we could go, not for me now at the moment. No, there's a few that are on that bubble, and I think he's looking maybe going elsewhere as well. But I think he's a good player. I do think he's a good player, let's say.
Yeah. Paul Nove says Rafa would have instant success. The fans would be on side, and he buys into the Geordie people, and that's what we want. He's not adverse to having Pochettino in. He wonders whether Harry Kane would be a target if Pochettino came in. I suppose, with the money that Newcastle are going to have to spend, and players like Harry Kane are on the list now, which in the last transfer window they certainly weren't. No,
I mean, you spoke about having Rondon back as well, and with all due respect to Rondon, he did well. He did well in the circumstances, but when you're Edison Cavani, you're talking about maybe, or Griezmann coming in, or Harry Kane, that's what we're looking at now. That's where we should be ambitious and going forward. And can Rafa manage them players? Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And it'd be a smooth transition to come in. But do we want that, or do we want something that's going to be exciting? When Kevin come through that door way back, it was like, this is the unknown. Let's ride this. And Pochettino, as I said, has got a point to prove. He's got a chip on his shoulder. I think we've got a chip on our shoulder, and we want to prove people wrong. He would fit that mold. But again, it's lovely to have that conversation about who do you want to have, rather than thinking, well, let's just take someone that actually wants to come to the club.
Key Bose and Mike Reed are suggesting Kai Havertz and Nagelsmann from Leipzig as potentials as well. What do you think about those two suggestions?
But, Kai Havertz is a talented player. He did well at the weekend. On Monday night again with Leverkusen. He's a talented player. Julian Nagelsmann is an interesting one. He's very forward-thinking, only 33 years of age. He's gone to Leipzig and done obviously fantastic in the Champions League against Spurs. I'm not sure whether he's ready to come into the Premier League and change things around, but he's definitely someone that you'd have your radar on. You look at the Bundesliga at the weekend with some of the players, it was very difficult for them, not playing competitive games, no atmosphere. No, Steve, you know what it's done for me, looking at it as an analyst and as an ex-player and as a coach, it made me now realise how important the fans are. And not that I didn't think that anyway. I think we got caught up in corporate money, let's just get the TV money. That without their fans, we don't have a sport, because it gives so much to the game. So I think for everybody in the world, it was looking and saying, yeah, it was great to have football back, but bloody hell, we missed the fans, because they're a big part of it. But they're the type of players, again, young, exciting. Sancho would be one. Hakimi would be another one. I said to you before, Steve, there's about 3 or 4 kids that I would look at the Bundesliga and say, look, and what's great with the Bundesliga, a lot of them, they have get-out clauses where you're not held to ransom. They've got $15 million, 15 million euros to get out. They're the ones you want to be looking at.
Amouar asks, it's about fans. Do you think people who gave up their season tickets last year as a protest against Ashley should have an opportunity to get them back after the takeover? My answer to that would be yes. I think that's something the new owners will address, because let's face it, 10,000 tickets have been given away for nothing in January this year. So those tickets are not really optional for those people who've got them. They were a freebie. People have took them on. I would imagine that there will be some kind of win-win for the new owners to come in and certainly look into the people who gave up their tickets within the last 12 months. I think that would be a fair way to do it.
Two things, Steve, what you do is you look at them 10,000 people that give their tickets back. How long have they been supporting a club? 15, 20, 30 years. They've probably been around and realising the situation. Second thing, build another tier, get another 20,000 people in there as well. So it's a win-win situation for everybody. But definitely the people that have give their tickets up and gone forward to look at it and say, yeah, we've had them tickets for 10 years. It's been in my family. It was just the circumstances. And I'm sure the new owners will buy into that as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think you're right there, and I think so. I read a report the other day that a lot of people were saying you can't extend the Gallagher, but that because of the land being bought at the back, but that's incorrect. Apparently, you can build on it, and that wouldn't be an issue. So it'll be interesting to see what comes of that. Mr. Telford says, "What's your honest opinion of Almiron?"
I like him. I think he's found it really difficult. And Steve, we spoke about it a few weeks ago. And the reason I think he's found it difficult is the way we play. As soon as we lose the ball, we get in our own half and we ask everybody to defend, to get behind the ball and then try and play on the counter-attack. We can't do that. You can't go into games, everybody behind the ball. We'll shuffle and try and break. I think he's honest. He's hardworking. I don't think you've seen the best of him. He's done very, very well over here in the MLS. Yes, it was a lot of money they paid for him, but I tell you what I think he's shown. He's shown a good appetite for the game. He wants to work hard. Is that enough for £25 million? No, that would be my statement. I want a bit more. But he hasn't been put in a position to express himself, to go forward and to entertain the fans like I know he can do. So yeah. I would keep him. I would keep him.
Yeah, good stuff. Mupp says, what ground did you feel most intimidated? I would imagine playing at Wimbledon, it would be difficult to be intimidated anywhere.
You weren't allowed to be intimidated. You wasn't allowed to. Anfield is always special. I think all fans as well. Highbury for me was good to go there as well. Yeah, I remember playing Millwall when I was at Wimbledon in a cup game. That was intimidating. They was crazy because there was 50-year-old men that were just wanting to get a hold of you and rip your head off. So that was another one. I tell you what, I was at Maidstone early in my career. So I was about 18, 19. Went down to Yeovil, down to there, and they was all close to you. That was intimidating as well because they was all men from the farms, big fellas, giving you all dog's abuse about your hair, your mum, your kid, whatever it was. They was coming after us. So that was intimidating, but also it was quite funny as well.
Yeah, Jeff Azed says, who is the most reliable journalist, Warren? Who do you think? Says, besides me, which is very nice. I'm not a journalist, but I know what you mean. Thanks.
Well, I think you said, John, you said earlier.
Yeah, John Richards.
Yeah, I like, he would be one. My time, Colin Young would be up there as well. Colin's always been around.
Yeah.
Oliver was there as well, Ollie. So
Oliver, yeah.
Yeah, that was fine. From that point of view, they was all reliable in the sense that you knew what, if you played crap, it was part and parcel of it. I remember having a trip when we flew out to America and sitting there with all the journalists just having a chat. And it's probably the best thing I did because you got to know them, because you sort of walk along and the journalists are there and you think, oh, I've got to go and speak to them or whatever. But once you actually get to them, they've got to do a job. And if you're honest with them, 9 times out of 10, they've been okay. And, when they did write something bad, you have to take it on the chin, and that's part and parcel of it. Yeah, that's part of the game.
I think that's what it comes down to. And I think what a lot of fans don't really think about is that, every manager has his particular connection. Is it fair to say a favourite, potentially journalist, somebody who's going to give them a fair crack at the whip? So ultimately what you get is certain journalists will be getting their stuff from the manager and they will paint a particular picture. And that's the way it works. So when a manager leaves and a particular journalist has been in favour, then a new manager comes in and suddenly it's another journalist's turn. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. You're only as good as your contacts, and that's what happens. And that's why certain journalists appear to have an agenda, because they do have an agenda, because they're pals with that particular manager.
Yeah, the thing that got me sometimes is when Sir Bobby would go and do a press conference and there'd be a young journalist just trying to make a point, just trying to be controversial for no reason. They're the ones that got my back up. They go into a press conference thinking, right, I'm going to go after you for this. Sometimes when you write a story, the game, we've done well, we've done badly, that's fine. You can live with that. But when someone's they make it personal, then that's when it gets my back up. And then that's when they're going away from the story or what they need to do. But you're right, Steve. People let things go out and go and do their story and leak things to the journalists to go forward and have that nugget. Everybody wants to break that news story. But I think when you've got an agenda, that's when you go away from doing your job and you're just trying to go after someone or make it difficult for people.
John Ball says the odds on signing Gareth Bale have massively shortened today. Do you think this is a realistic signing with his wages?
I would take him. I'd take a chance on him if he was a free agent and with his potential. I think you look at his record, what he's done. Got lovely golf courses in the northeast, so he'd be more than welcome to play a bit of golf up there. That he would be one that you would say, yeah, he could be the first one that would come in. Yeah, yes, he's got injuries. Yes, and I know his agent, Jonathan Barnett, he was my agent actually, so I know where he comes from. But yeah, he's a hell of a player and he's a winner. I think that would be a great statement, and another one that would probably feel comfortable in the northeast. He's very quiet. He wants to just get on and play his football. Yeah, I mean, again, Steve, it's lovely that we're talking about Gareth Bale coming to St James's Park rather than saying, well, who's on the free? Who can we get? Who's cheap? You're talking about someone that's won the Champions League, what, 3 times? 4 times? Yeah. 3 times? Yeah. So for me, it would be a no-brainer.
Tell Ross says, have you kept any of your old shirts? Are you a shirt collector, Warren?
Yeah, I did. I was lucky enough. I kept my first Grandad Cup, both of them. My first shirts at Newcastle. Every year I kept them as well. My cup final shirts I've got. Yeah, so I do collect them. They're around somewhere. I put them in storage at the moment, and I give 1 or 2 away to people that, whether it's for charity or someone that was just a friend of mine, I just give them away. My brother's got a couple of them as well, my England shirts. So yeah, I do keep them.
I was going through some photos as well this week, being a proper one. This is a classic. This, Warren, that's me with three FA Cup final medals: 1951, 1952. And 1955, and the significance of them is that Bobby Cowell's FA Cup final medals that he won for Newcastle. Amazing that was another night that I did, and his grandson came and brought them to share with the
fantastic. Did you ever have hair, Steve? You ever had hair?
No,
you haven't, have you?
No, it's because I'm a Newcastle fan. It dropped out. It dropped out in 1984.
You can have my 2 cup final medals, but they're losers, so you won't want them. You don't mind. Have them as a medallion or something. You can wear them around your
earrings.
Earrings. Put a couple of them on. You'll be well.
Terry Armstrong says, do you ever get starstruck playing against a certain player? Was there ever a player that you were like, wow, I'm on the same pitch as him?
Maybe Alan, make his head feel a bit bigger. No. It's. I mean, I remember being at. Ian Russ said to me, when you go towards the end of your career, remember as a young boy being told twice you're too small, you're not going to make it, and then you're playing at Wembley in a cup final. So just take them moments. Then things I was in awe of, or going to Highbury where I was as a kid, or at St James's Park, being there, realising what you're doing. So not as a player, it was great when we played against Zidane, Figo, them type of players. But yeah, respect, but don't be in awe of them. Yeah, the only one I was a big Liam Brady fan, and I played a charity game for Steve Collins, the boxer, and Liam played. And I wanted to go over to him and just shake his hand. He was a lovely, lovely man, Liam. Anyone that's ever met Liam Brady, he was actually the academy coach when he played the game. For me, that was great. And, being with Brian Robson, I was a big Brian Robson fan. And being around Brian was great as well. I actually did my A licence with him up at Lilleshall and spent many, many nights in the bar with him going forward. So that was nice being with Brian Robson as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Neely Kin says, we all miss Gary Speed. Warren, what was your best memory of him?
His bloody silly laugh. I shared a room with him for 4 years and become very good friends with Louise and the kids, Tommy and Ed. He had that laugh, that infectious laugh. He was a hell of a player. He was one of the best professionals I've ever worked with. Yeah, he would socialise, but come training day, he was magnificent. It's the same old story, Steve. Sometimes you don't realise what you got until you lost it. And he was someone that we didn't realise, because I never, you're talking about this mental situation at the moment with Lee Hendry. Speedo was never, ever one that I thought had the problem. Because if we went to Old Trafford on a Monday night, first name I would have with him, Al, Speedo, Gary Speed, Alan, Rob Lee. They're the people I want with me. And he would be there. So, I miss him every day, as I miss not winning the Premier League. I had that same type of feeling, because he was a top-class person. But all of them as well. I mean, some of the goals, you see it the other weekend against Sheffield United, Sheffield Wednesday, the header. He's a phenomenal player. I think, as I said, we didn't realise how good he was until he wasn't there.
Last question, Warren, because ours flew over again. Kay McGarry says, playing for Wimbledon, you had Vinny and Fash, etc. Who was the tough guy at Newcastle? I've heard Rob Lee was the gaffer. Rob
Lee? Stick his big fat arse into someone. That's all Doggy could do. Well, it was like we had Stuart Pearce that come towards the end of his career. He was as hard as nails. David Batty. He was a tough so-and-so. And you spoke about that. I think Alan was someone that he would go toe-to-toe. And the situation that he said about with Roy Keane, I think I told you that. He said to me, Rob, Speedo, I said, look, if it goes off, make sure you come over there. It was like, no, you can handle him yourself, son. You're big enough. So, yeah, Alan, I think we wasn't part of that crazy. Wimbledon would win our games in the tunnel. We would intimidate people in the tunnel. We would do it another way with Newcastle.
Yeah, Youngsy, you can have the last question. He asked this earlier and I missed it.
Is he a mate of yours?
No, I don't know him, but it's a good question. He says, will you ask Warren his memories of the fashion show at St James's Park? Oh. My mum fell in love with him that night.
We were so uncomfortable, Steve. They've asked us to go in, and the only one that loved it was obviously David. He straight away took his shirts off. He's walking down the catwalk going forward. And me and Les and Shaka was like the stiff balls walking along, going backwards and forwards, going and doing it. But we did it. It was, again, something that we probably regret sometimes with some of the pictures that come out. It was like a boy band with the hair and everything, the centre part and going forward. But we couldn't get Ginola off the catwalk. He was going up and down. Even when it wasn't his turn, he was doing it all the time. So, but it was fun. We had a lot of fun. And yeah, I remember going there for the club shop as well, when 10,000 people outside at midnight trying to come through. So hopefully we get them days back. Well, then that's definitely not my car.
Your car's arrived, Warren. Your car's arrived.
There's a taxi for you, Steve. Off you go, son.
Well, hopefully the takeover will happen in the next week. So it might be good to get you back on next week, mate, if you're up for it.
Absolute pleasure. No problem, my friend. Absolute pleasure.
Good stuff, mate. You stay safe. Look to the family. Take care.
And to you. All the best, everybody. Take care. Stay safe.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Great to have Warren on again. Top lad. And as I say, hopefully we will get him back on next week.